Can you hear me?
I can, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great. Hyacinth just texted me and said she'll be about 5 more minutes and she'll be here.
All right.
Hello.
Good afternoon. How are you, Mary?
Good.
Mary.
Good to see you.
Hello, hello.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for asking. Hyacinth is attending. She just texted me a minute or two ago and said she'd be on in about 5 minutes. So we do have a quorum, so we can go ahead and begin. So I hereby call the quarterly executive committee meeting to order for our October meeting. And Courtney, can you put our agenda up on the screen, please? For everyone to see. Thank you. I'm going to do a quick roll call. So if you would, please say present when I call your name. Stephen Wynn.
Present.
Thank you, sir. Mary Farmer.
Present.
Thank you. Mike Billings.
Present.
And Hyacinth McKee. I don't believe she has joined us just yet, but she did text me to say she will be joining us very short. And of course, you're stuck with me. So here we begin the meeting now. Let me go ahead and start by reading our mission statement and ground rules for everybody. Thank you, Courtney. And our our mission statement is to increase independence, self-determination, productivity, integration, and inclusion for Louisianans with developmental disabilities by engaging in advocacy, capacity building, and systems change. That's the mission of our council. Next is our ground rules for today's meeting and for every meeting. that we hold, and they are as follows. Members must be recognized by the chair before speaking. Please be respectful of each other's opinions. We break for 10 minutes every hour and a half. Please discuss council business in a responsible manner. Except as necessary, restrict the use of electronic communication such as texting during council and committee meetings. Please silence and turn off all cell phones where that applies. Of course, we understand we're in a digital environment. So, but please silence those cell phones if they would be a distraction to our meeting. The mission statement is posted at every meeting. Please be on time for meetings. No alphabets. That means wherever we have an acronym to use, let's please try to remember not everyone knows what those mean. So let's try as much as we can to use the full names of the agencies or the acts or whatever it is we're discussing. And please, side conversations are to be kept to a minimum, done quietly and restricted to the subject at hand. And that is the ground rules for today's meeting. Now, I next want to introduce our parliamentarian. She has accepted our invitation to come on board and assist us with our meetings and carrying them out according to Robert's Rules of Order. So you will notice a few changes already, but we want to welcome Miss Nicole Learson. And Nicole, if you would like to take the floor and let everyone know who you are and what your credentials are, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you all, and I'm looking forward to working with each of you. I am a professional registered parliamentarian through the National Association of Parliamentarians. I've been certified over a number of years of study and testing. In addition to that, I am the president of the Baton Rouge Unit of Parliamentarians, vice president of the Louisiana Association. And in addition to the National Association, I do also belong to the American Institute of Parliamentarians. I have clients all over the Southeast. I assist with bylaw revision and review, as well as I'm a professional presider in some instances when organizations need a third party to come and preside over meetings. And of course, I do workshops and trainings on leadership skills, parliamentary procedure. And while my expertise is Robert's Rules of Order, and I am current with the new edition that just was released in August of this year. Additionally, I am familiar with other parliamentary authorities. So I look forward to assisting you in any way that I can. And certainly, I hope that you'll find value in what it is I have to share with you. Thank you.
I promise you we will, and thank you very much for your service with us, Nicole. And I want to point out that she will be conducting a training for the entire executive committee, and that is to be scheduled. It'll be after the October meetings have concluded, but we will be having a Zoom meeting where she will be working with us to train us with Robert's Rules of Order and how best to carry out our functions and our duties here. So I just wanted to point that out to you guys, that is something to look out for in the not too distant future. So, okay, is that all you have to say, Ms. Learson? Okay, thank you. Courtney, could you please put our agenda back up on our screen? Thank you. But I want to welcome everybody today, and as we move on to more business at hand, the first thing I want to discuss is the amended September 19th, 2020 Executive Committee Summary. If there are no questions, that's there in the link. If there are no questions, I'm going to ask those to be considered approved as presented here. If you do have questions or corrections you'd like to make, please now let us know. Okay, hearing none, is there any comment in our chat box?
No comments at this time, Randall.
Thank you, Ebony. Okay, hearing no comment, the amended September 19th, 2020 Executive Committee Summary is approved as distributed. Next is our September 25th, 2020 Executive Committee Summary. And again, we'll follow the same procedure. I'm not going to ask for a typical vote. I'm going to ask, are there any corrections or amendments that need to be made? And again, you see that link there in the agenda, so hopefully you've all had time to look over it. Do I hear any comments about corrections that need to be made or amendments to the September 25th, 2020 Executive Committee Summary? Okay. Are there any comments with regard to this in the chat box?
No comments at this time.
Thank you, Ebony.
I'm sorry, Randall. I take that back. We do have a comment from Ms. Jill Eagley. I think she wants to know why didn't anyone call my name during check-in attendance? I just got reappointed back to the DD Council by Governor. I think she's talking about her assignments as far as committees go, Randall.
Okay. Well, Jill, I was going to ask you either tomorrow or Thursday what committees you'd like to serve on. So I will reach out to you at that time, either tomorrow or Thursday, and we'll find out what committees you'd want to serve on, and that's where you will be. Okay, and that was out of order, and I apologize, but I wanted to let Jill know that I will be getting in touch with her about her committee assignments. Okay, are there any other comments pertaining to the Executive Committee meeting summary for September 25th, 2020? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as distributed. Next, we're on to our review of the 2021 legislative agenda items, excuse me. And we have the LECAN recommendations as well as the advocacy agenda issues and highest priorities all linked there. So Courtney, if you want to run through a few clicks first with the recommendations so everyone can take a look at that. And we'll begin our discussion. Okay. So these are the recommendations from our LECAN leaders and Family Helping Families directors recommended And there are 3 items listed below, as you can see, for us to consider for the inclusion in the 2021 legislative advocacy agenda. And they listed them in priority. 1 being cameras in special education classrooms and parent access to school videos. 2, an additional $500,000 in state funding in the DD Council budget for the family centers. This would be double council funding for the centers. And the 3rd item they are recommending is funding for direct support workers for a wage increase. I want to point out that the LeCan leaders and families centers directors all agreed that due to the current circumstances, which include a reduced number of staff and the uncertainty advocating due to COVID-19, their recommendation would be 2 to 3 items. And funding for direct support workers' wage increase was reached after much deliberation on enforcing a wage pass-through versus the option of a home and community-based services provider rate increase. Any questions from the committee? All right. Do we have any questions?
Randall.
Yes.
Randall. Hey,
Yes,
I just
Mary.
wanted to make sure out of the things that were attached, like they went through the other sheets that had like all the issues and took those things and went to the highest priority and then got to this top 3. Is that how?
That seems to be how they did it. Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Yes. Do any other committee members have a question? Do we have any council members who have a question, or any members of the public who have a question pertaining to this item?
And Randall,
It's a
Nicole
question.
Banks has her hand raised.
Yes, Nicole, welcome to the council, and you have the floor.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I had a question about the wages since it was approved for it to be increased. What did they increase it to? Was it like a board overall increase, like a percentage, or like did they do it from $16 an hour to $18 an hour or something like that?
Courtney, would you like to speak to that question? Oh, okay. She's not on the panel. To my knowledge, it was. Go ahead, Courtney.
Sorry, I'm having to fight with my mute button.
I understand.
No, I do not believe that the recommendation from the LeCan recommendations included a specific amount or a specific percentage. So I don't know if that answers Ms. Banks' question.
So they just want us to advocate that we do an increase.
So who decides who gets the increase and how much they get, and like who decides that?
We would have to decide it as a
Oh,
council.
Okay. And how much is going to be allocated to whatever agencies or whatever agencies that's handling that sort of direct care worker process, right?
We would have to decide what percentage we would like to see go to the direct care worker, I would
Okay.
assume.
Okay. Yeah, I just asked
And
about
by
direct care worker
we, I
at
mean the
one
council.
time. So that's why I asked, because That will be nice for direct care workers to get a little increase.
Sure. And the current rate of pay, and I was about to say, the current rate of pay is at the 2008 level, where it was restored uh, a couple of, I believe, sessions ago now, legislative sessions ago. It was restored to the 2008 pay level, and that's where it is currently, it remains at this time. Do you have any other questions on this question? Do I have any other comments on this question before us?
Fernando, there is a comment in the chat from Miss Karonda Corley.
Could you please read it for us?
It's the question. She asked, can the DD Council ask for funding to go to other entities that service underserved and minority communities?
We certainly can do that, yes. What I think we have to decide is if we want to adopt these suggestions from our LeCan and Families leaders or not. But before we do that, I might recommend finishing going through the rest of the documents that relate to this. And I believe Hyacinth is with us, is she not, Courtney?
Yes, sir. Welcome, Dr. McKee.
Welcome,
Thank
Madam
you.
Vice
Good
Chair.
afternoon. Good afternoon, y'all.
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Glad you could be with us. Okay, Courtney. So, all right, Mary, you have a question?
I just wanted to make a comment that to make sure that everybody was understanding this is for us to do for the advocacy agenda. This isn't what, like we don't have the final say in if this
Right.
happens or not. This is just us deciding if these are the things we're going to work on for the advocacy agenda.
Right. Things we're going to ask
I just,
the legislators for.
right.
Essentially. Thank you for that clarification, Mary. All right, Courtney, can we look at the other documents related to this as well? Can you pull the agenda up? And so this would be their rubric for scoring. Is that right? The funding increases. So before you are the issues and how the group of leaders has scored them by importance. So this is how they got to those recommendations. Have any questions from the committee? Brenton, would you like to read Karanda's question and let us know your response? I see there was a question there.
Let's see. It looks like she asked, does the one mean high or low priority? I think I may have missed what document she's referring to. I mean, what I'm thinking based on the document that's on the screen now, if it's a one, then it would mean only one person voted that as a priority. So when looking at the document that's on the screen now, if the higher the number that, you know, the looking at the top one, additional funding for individual and family support. So 3 people rated it as a priority 1, which is like their top priority. And then 5 people would have rated it as a priority 2. So it's kind of like the lower the priority, the higher it would be in their ranking, so to say. Like they came up with cameras. So obviously a majority of them ranked that as their highest priority for this session.
Right.
And then you can see they had 7 people that ranked it in their top of their priority list. So that's kind of how that document works. And this document that y'all are looking at, it appears, yeah, this is the highest priority. Sorry, on my end, it looks a little different. This document, it looks like this is basically the document you were looking at earlier with the 67 ideas. These are all the ideas that they had, are the recommendations that they received from their community input meetings. These are the ones that rank the highest in their priorities. So we put them all into this one document. And then you can see the note at the bottom of this document kind of lets you know why some of the things are marked off. So for instance, you'll see training for first responders. That was something they felt was important, but it was marked off because we have an initiative in our plan that's going to address that. So rather than advocating for this at the legislature, they've marked it off because it is something that's going to be covered in the council's action plan, which begins this month. And then you can see for the funding for waiver services, that one has a scratch through because the intent, we got clarity on that. The intent of having that listed there was to talk about DSP wages. Essentially, that's what the person was trying to get. They wanted more money in waivers, if you will, because they wanted that to be reflected in the pay of their DSP workers. So that's why that has a line through it, because it was kind of lumped in with the other request for funding for direct support professionals wage increase. The only one on this list that was not initially brought up or listed as a highest priority, but it was brought up, a couple leaders made a case for it, was the funding for the SPOS program. And so that's why that has the 3 asterisks there. Basically, that was something that was brought to kick off that people wanted to have considered, or that one of the leaders felt it was important that that be ranked higher than it actually was ranked. And so that's why that one ended up being on the highest priority list, because they made a good case as to why that would be something the council should consider as well to be funded. But in general, I don't know if you have specific questions about this or not.
Thank you, Brenton, for that clarification. Does the committee have any questions with regard to that data information?
Randall.
Yes, Mary.
Okay, so I guess there were a couple of things that were on the list where you could see all the scoring that had a higher ranking as far as being statewide and whether or not there would be maybe a legislative fix. And one of those things thought and I remembered hearing people talk about was the continued allowance for family members to work as support workers for their loved ones living in the same household. And I know that came up because of COVID and not having and so I just wonder, were there some of these things that were on here, was there another fix besides it being on this legislative advocacy recommendations, or are we looking at that to say off these lists, how many of these other things could we
Well,
add, or
if
how,
I may,
Yeah.
I think that that's kind of what we're trying to determine today before we present this to the council on Thursday, is what do we believe to be the priority? I mean, we have this recommendation from our leaders. And so taking that into account, as well as our own understanding of, as you said, the COVID crisis, and I'm sure the budget crisis that will follow it, what we want our legislative agenda to look like next year. And what we recommend to our members should be our priority list of items. And that is an extensive list. And so, again, we run into this issue annually because they have a lot of good things on the list, and we'd like to be able to do them all. But the fact of the matter is, particularly in this year, I would argue strongly for a legislative agenda that was, that I think they rightly were on the right track when they listed 3 items. And the reason being is because you're going to have, I believe, a very restrictive budget. I think we're going to have a lot of budget shortfall due to the pandemic and crisis surrounding it, and not to mention the 2 hurricanes we've suffered as a state. So I think it's only prudent for us to look at what we consider our most important objectives and have those be our top and really, dare I say, only priority for this particular upcoming session next year. And that's tough for me to say because this year, as in every year, I'd love to see everything on this list done. And I know we all would. But the reality is that we have to be mindful of what we're asking and who we're asking. And the legislators are keenly aware of the problems and issues themselves. And so, and we will continue to make sure they are, for those that may be new and are not so aware. But we certainly want to be prudent in our choice of how we spend our energy, because we also have limited staff for this upcoming session. So that's a big thing for us to consider too. They can only do so much. So what are our thoughts and feelings on it? I think, is there a clarifying comment from a LeCan leader in the chat box?
Yes, Randall. Julie Foss, the LeCan leader for Region 3, she said, I would also like to clarify that the leaders scored this based on what our members expressed were important through our member meetings.
Thank you, Julie. That's important for us to know. Thank you for that comment. So I gave my thoughts on the agenda. What do you all think as a committee? What are our thoughts?
Mike has his hand raised, Randall.
Yes, Mike, you have the floor.
We can't hear you, Mike. You have to unmute.
That's been my problem all day. Sorry. I was saying I am very comfortable moving forward with the recommendations presented to us, and I think limiting the scope of those is very prudent of us at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Any other questions or comments from the committee members? Before I ask for a motion to adopt these recommendations, are there any questions relevant to it in or comments relevant to it in our chat box?
So Liz Gary has her hand raised, Randall, but there's also a question in the Q&A. What would you like to do first?
Can we do the question first, please, and then Liz is next?
Okay, so Miss Kelly Monroe asked, how much money is requested in the 3 different asks?
That's a great question. Is there anyone from the LeCan leadership that would, or the Films and Families leadership that was there that would like to answer it better than I could?
Randall, this is Brenton. I can tell
Yes,
you
Brenton.
much. So for FHF, I think it was included in the recommendations was the $500,000 in state general funds. Cameras, it would be based on the fiscal note from last year, which I think was around $8 million. And there was not a recommended amount for the DSP wages. That would have to be something the council would need to decide if that's
Right.
an agenda ask. There has to be an amount that we would ask for, so the council would have to determine what's appropriate.
We would have to decide that as a body.
So we're looking at 8.5 million between the first 2, which is the cameras and FHF, and then whatever the council would deem appropriate if you opted to go with the DSP wages.
Thank you, sir, for that clarification. Okay, Liz, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Randall. I appreciate it. I just wanted to, it kind of goes back with what Kelly was saying, but I just wanted to keep in mind that we're getting ready to go into a deficit that coming, probably in January and definitely for sure into the next year. So I just thought that you might want to consider thinking about some other options there that may not be having any kind of funding, because I have a strong suspicion that we're going to be swimming to try to get out of instead of drowning, we're going to be swimming upstream trying to just keep services. And so I think it would be best if there was some things out there that potentially could be things that aren't going to cost us anything to consider those, because I have a strong suspicion. It's been about 2 years now, but we went on about 3 or 4 years where we literally were just fighting to keep waivers and other services from being cut. And keep in mind that the FMAP is only keeping them from cutting optional services right now. Once that FMAP is gone, they can go after the optional services again. So I just wanted to, put that as a food for thought for y'all. I appreciate the time. Thank you so much, Randall.
I thank you for that, Liz, and I share your concern with regard to future budget deficits. I think that we definitely will have a budget deficit. The only question that remains that I don't think anyone yet knows the answer to is how large of one. And so we definitely will be having to advocate to keep the services we currently have. I think that's pretty much a given that the economy has been so impacted in our state by COVID and the natural disasters we've faced this year that there's no question we're going to have large impacts to the budget and the way our Constitution structures everything. Healthcare, which we're under, is one of the first it's always looked at for reductions and cuts. And so I think your recommendation is a prudent one, and thank you. And I think it's also important to point out we're in a period of transition as a council too, and the staff is going to be limited in what they can accomplish for us as well, because we're minus 2 staff members at present. And so everyone is doing their job plus elements of the others as best they can. And I think they're doing phenomenal considering the circumstances, but we do need to take into account as the executive committee that there will be, that's a heavy workload for them that gets heavier the more we ask for. Okay. So do we have any other comments or questions from the committee? Is there anything the public or the staff would like to share?
Mary has her hand raised, Randall, and then there are 2 comments in the chat that I can read after Mary.
Okay. Thank you, Ebony. Mary, you have the floor.
Yeah, I think I've been, as I was looking over these previously, I agree. And I think that some of the things that we're asking for, all money related, are going to be problematic for us. But I know that there are a couple of things on here that were, I guess we could say, like, turned out to be a benefit for families during COVID, like the having telehealth services beyond the pandemic, having the families be able to be the support workers for their loved ones. And I just wonder if we could put something on here as like continuing services that have helped the DD families during COVID, and suggest that those continue. Like, and I think there's a couple of more that were on here that, started out during the pandemic, but have been, if you can do telehealth services and that helps families, I think that's something, I don't know how, and I see that on here, whether the legislative fix, they had scored it as a 4. I don't know if that's something to follow up with on the legislative side or on the community-based, services part. But I wonder if there's things on here that we could pick up on. There was another one, and individuals using self-direction should have all unused units in the budget transferred automatically from quarter to quarter to the end of their CP date. And I wonder, I wonder, I don't have enough knowledge because it hasn't happened in my world yet that this is, but as I'm reading through them, it makes me think that it would be something that we could maybe look at that don't have any or a lot of answer to it, but have something else to look at. And so I guess I just wanted to get some feedback from somebody that might have some more knowledge of these things. But I am worried that we're asking for money 3 times on projects that are probably not gonna
in this particular budget
successful
year.
at this moment. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all agree these three are hugely needed and necessary. The problem and the conundrum we know we're facing already is the fact that the budget simply won't sustain it, is our fear, given the crisis we're in due to the pandemic and the storms that we've endured. So, no, I think you're being prudent, Mary, and I thank you for that recommendation. I don't know if the staff has any particular enlightenment they can shed on projects that are listed there that aren't particular, won't raise the won't be a huge monetary ask, let me put it that way, that we can still ask for and hopefully receive in terms of services and things that are needed by the community. Does the staff have anything, Brenton or Courtney, that y'all would like to add to help us out there as far as what we could do in terms of projects that are ongoing that wouldn't add to the budget, but would help the community?
As I'm sure Brenton's probably more familiar with this list, I will defer to him.
Okay. Brenton, do you have any thoughts on it as far as what you feel would be advantageous to put that wouldn't necessarily be a huge monetary ask, but are necessary and could be, we could feasibly see them being able to be done in 2021?
I would have to do more research into the list. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we looked at it based on what the leaders and directors have said their regional membership felt was important. And so while we have this list of 67 ideas, I can't say that I would know everything about everything that's on this list. Because we also, I mean, we don't have the capability right now to go through and vet every single one of these things that are on this list.
I understand.
I can tell you a lot of things that has already been talked about. In my opinion, is probably not a legislative fix. It might just be more of a administrative type fix, or it might just be, you need a rule change or something. So I mean, no, I can't say that I have information on everything on this list because we kind of targeted based on what was reported to us as the most important. I will say, just to reiterate some things you had mentioned earlier about being fearful of cuts. I do think it's very likely. I don't know if anybody's been watching the special session, but multiple times in committees, it's been mentioned that we need to anticipate cuts coming our way. Also, if you are still considering DSP wage increases, I do think it's something that's very important, but I also just want to remind everyone, again, I don't know if you've been paying attention to the special session, but keep in mind, I think there's, in the supplemental appropriations bill, there's going to be $36 million that's going to providers. So when you're thinking of including that in your ask, if that's something you're considering, especially if you're thinking about the amount of money it would cost, I would just recommend taking that into consideration because you're going to have probably some legislators that are going to ask about some of the legislators are going to be asking about this money. I know it's not going directly to DSPs, but it is one of the things they're going to consider that they've already given money to providers. So not saying that to discourage you, I just wanted to, I need to share that information with you since that was discussed in our committee before this. So I want to make sure you
understand. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, that money's not, I'm sorry, that money's not going to staff. It was clear that that's going to be administrative or whatever the agencies feel that they need to use it for. Is it possible that we can advocate that some of that money is in fact directed to DSPs? I mean, would that be more of a push on the DDC to ensure that there is some accountability to that money.
Brenton, how do you feel about that?
Sorry, I was on mute. It's my understanding that bill has already made it through the process and has been sent to the governor.
Okay. Well, I want to remind everybody to please remember to ask for the floor before we speak. I know we're not accustomed to that.
I'm so sorry about that.
It's okay. It's okay. I just want to make sure that our
I came
parliamentarian
on
knows we're not
late. I
ignoring.
apologize.
All right. Thank you for your input. And, I always encourage it. We love to hear from all of us, but I want our parliamentarian to know I am paying attention to her, and she is correct. We need to ask for the floor before we speak. So thanks. Okay, so I guess what we have to look at now is, do we want to accept the 3 recommendations from our leaders as they have presented them? Or do we feel, given all that's been shared with us today and what we feel to be pertinent information as well, do we feel that we need to modify our ask to reflect the budgetary crisis we know we will be facing, and therefore come up with a different list of recommendations that might include one of these or some of these 3 items, but might also include items that wouldn't necessarily have us asking the legislature for more money next session to do.
Stephen has his hand raised, Randall.
Yes, you have the floor, Stephen.
So I guess my question is one of the questions in the comment box. Is it feasible to have 2 priority lists, one that is a deficit and one if there is not? Can we have 2 lists going at the same time? Or would that be too much?
The problem I think we would have is that we're almost all but certain there will be a deficit. So any list we create that says there would not be would be a wish list that we're almost certain we would shelve. And so I would question being able to create that at this time and then have the staff have to create that and that not be a feasible option, because we're already hearing from our legislators in this session that cuts are to be expected. And I think we're going to have to focus our energy a lot more than we would like on protecting the services and issues that we've already fought for. Was there another comment to that in the chat box?
Yes, Randall. Miss Kathy Dwyer has had her hand raised and she has comments in the chat as well. I'm assuming she would just address her comments.
Yeah, let's just give Miss Kathy the floor and she can express herself to us. Miss Kathy, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Executive Committee. Thank you for letting me speak. I am reminded of Katrina, after Katrina, being a survivor, also a state employee at the time. Legislators were clear we would have a deficit. They started initiating furloughs for a lot of the state agencies, all of the state agencies, as a matter of fact. As it turned out, because of all the influx of federal money, we ended up with a surplus, not a deficit. So you may want to prepare just in case there isn't a deficit. I know it looks like that, and this is a statewide, national, international, world problem, but we are getting a lot of influx of federal money, not just for COVID, but for the hurricanes, both hurricanes. So that might make up for what appears to be a deficit. You know, I don't think anybody's going to know that until, you know, all the accounting has been completed.
Right. Well, thank you very much for that feedback, Ms. Kathy. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay. I saw Charlie. Michelle had a few comments. Charlie, would you like to speak? If so, you have the floor.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. We can.
Okay. I was just saying, I know when I was working for the school system after Katrina, Kathy's absolutely right. There was a lot of federal dollars that came in. But for the school systems, and I can't speak for other government entities, it was years after the expenses were originally incurred. So the school systems had to pony up the money, whether it's through loans or through reserve funds, in the here and now, while those expenses had to be dealt with, new buildings, new roofs, new everything. So my opinion is, while that is true and it will correct itself over time, I think we need to look at the here and now, and to think that there won't be some sort of budget implication, a severe budget implication, I think would be short-sighted. I also am concerned about having dual priority lists, because it then looks like maybe we can't make a decision. And my last point is I think if we decide, Liz made a good point, I thought, if we decide to go with things that are only on the no cost list, just don't cut, please don't cut. These services are critical to the people that are receiving them. I think that does two things. One, it shows that we are cognizant of the problems that legislators and our government officials are facing right now. And the other thing is, it shows that we're team players. So we're not always out asking for more. We're recognizing that there are other people that may need things more right now than we do, but we can wait our turn till next year. Because for the last, I've only been in this job for 2 years, but prior to my getting here, the accomplishments of the DD Council and LACAN and all those concerted efforts have been astronomical, and have had positive impact, significant positive impact on many, many people. So I think if we can my recommendation is consider being team players. Let's keep what we've got, and let's not appear to be part of the problem as far as the legislators who already have these other things to deal with. So, that's all I have to say. I don't think we can go wrong, but that's just my recommendation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. So we've had significant discussion and feedback from our public today. You have the recommendation before you from our leaders, Families and Families, and our LACAN leaders. And I want to also make clear that this is a year that we are certain will have budget implications. There's no question. The only question we have that no one can yet answer sufficiently is how large of a budget deficit, therefore how large will the cuts be. And I think it's a fair point to bring home to us that we have to protect what we've already fought for, and that's going to be a necessary thing. That's we're going to have to do. We already know that, and so I think it's prudent to take that into account as we make these decisions today. I also think that there's always next year. Ms. Kathy's exactly right. The FEMA will definitely contribute for hurricane relief at some point. We will receive COVID aid at some point. The problem we have is as we are preparing to ask for things, it'll be next year before some of that, maybe even any of that aid has reached us. And so I think we have to be mindful of that as well. So we could ask for things next year is what I'm trying to say. If we wanted to do where we ask for, just please don't cut the services we already have for this coming year. And then for 2022, as things recover, as we're more flush with the funding, then to step forward and say, these are our priorities for additional spending for our community. I think Charlie has a fair point. That does help us to let the legislature know that we are aware of the total of things going on around us and how important um, not just our community is, but all the suffering that our entire state is enduring through all of this. And so, you know, I think that we're all phenomenal advocates. This is a very tough thing to have to say. You know, we know we're going to have to do less than we would like, but I think it's an enormous effort we're going to have to put forward just to save the things that we've all fought for and up to this point. So are there any questions from the committee, comments from the committee? Are there any comments in the chat box?
There is one comment from Ms. Kathleen Canino. She says, I'd just like to request that cameras remain on the list, and the Governor's Advisory Council on Disability Affairs has added it as well. So I think working together will be a tremendous benefit. It will protect the children and teachers.
Thank you, Kathleen, for that perspective. Okay, so are you guys comfortable about a motion? I'm asking the committee. How do we feel about a motion?
Stephen has his hand raised, Randall.
Yes, Stephen.
A motion asking for,
Well, we need to make recommendations to the full council for the legislative advocacy agenda. So we would need a motion to do that. So I guess my question is, what are we thinking in terms of a motion? Because if you're not comfortable making a motion, I believe there are some options for us to look at. I think I was not able to see that text, but I just want to know where y'all are at in terms of emotion. As far as we've got to produce something to, we've got to produce something today. We've got to be able to do something on this topic.
I guess my question is, what on this list does not tie to funding? I mean, I'm looking at the list. I'm thinking something like telehealth, permanent telehealth services would be important. And
yes, it would be the things that we know are already being done would be a good place to start. So you're right, telehealth would be one, because that's currently ongoing.
Hyacinth has her hand raised, Randall.
Yes, Hyacinth, you have the floor.
I don't know who it was in the chat box, but it was someone from the public that made a good comment about we should focus on our advocacy efforts to make sure that there are no cuts, to advocate
Yes.
for not having any cuts. Maybe that the priority needs to shift to that. I mean, I don't know who it was in the public that made that comment, but I found that.
So excuse me, I'm just trying to clarify. You're right, and I agree with you in that sense that I think we're going to have to do that regardless of what we choose today. we're going to be in the position of fighting for no cuts.
Right, but
So-
it sounds like, and maybe I'm not gauging the temperament of the executive committee well, but it sounds like no one's really comfortable with making a motion right now as the way it stands. It sounds like we're kind of like and so if that is the case, because I mean, I know it's important for us to be on this topic, but we've been on it for a while.
I know. I think you're gauging it perfectly, actually. And I think
Okay.
if that is your suggestion, then that should be the motion that
Yeah, so I would like to make that motion, and I'm going to see if I can word it in such a way so that the public understands that we are not saying that the 3 that has been brought to our attention based on our meetings are not important. It's just that we should focus all of our efforts on making sure that we don't have the cuts. I mean, I've heard several members today say that some cuts are going to happen.
Yeah.
So maybe the motion should be recommending that due to COVID-19 and the anticipation of possible budget cuts to our existing programs, that the DDC should shift this priority to advocating that we do not have any cuts to our existing programs for our families.
services, right?
Services for our self-advocates and families. And so that's the motion that I would like to offer to the committee right now.
Okay. Is there a second to Hyacinth's motion? And that is for us to have a motion for for us to advocate solely for there to be no cuts to our existing services and systems for the 2021 legislative agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, so Hyacinth has made the motion and Stephen seconds. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, no. Do I have anyone who abstains? So if you're in favor, please say aye.
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 Mary? I think the ayes have it. I think this is the motion that we will present to our council on Thursday for their consideration. Okay. So that is, okay. Courtney is asking, could you please repeat, Hyacinth, what your motion is?
Let me see if I can recall what I said. The motion is that the LADDC shifts its priority to focus on ensuring that services to our self-advocates, family, and the community are not cut. But I did say it clearer than that. But basically, we want to shift our priority to ensure that services are not cut for our families. Existing services are not cut due to COVID. I said due to COVID. I did say due to COVID-19 and the anticipation of budget shortfalls. Our our advocacy efforts would shift to ensure to advocate that services will not be cut, funding for services will not be cut, existing services will not be cut for our families.
Okay, and even though we're wording that as we speak, the intent of the motion we voted upon, and it's unanimous. So we're getting our language together here. Excuse me, our parliamentarian wants me to note that it's not unanimous, but a majority have agreed. So the motion has carried. So can we move forward to our next item? Okay, we need to decide on future council meeting dates and in-person activities or virtual meetings. So this means for 2021, how do we feel about our future meeting schedules and our the way we do it for 2021? And here on the screen, you'll see a tentative schedule, and I would urge its adoption. It follows the 3-month pattern and the 2 days for each quarter of 2021. And then you see below that a proposed schedule for even the 2022 meetings. And so I would recommend that we pass those by majority, because that's the schedule we have always maintained, but we wanted to, in this time of uncertainty and COVID, we wanted to go ahead and get our approval for this. So I guess I would simply ask, is there any objection to this being our tentative schedule for 2021? Is there a motion to adopt, I should say, this tentative schedule for 2021 and 22? Do I have a motion from the committee to adopt?
Stephen has his hand raised, Randall.
Yes, Stephen.
I would like to make a motion to adopt this tentative schedule for 2021 and 2022.
Okay, thank you, sir. Stephen has made the motion to adopt the tentative schedule you see on your screen for 2021 and 2022. Do I have a second to Stephen's motion?
Second.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Hyacinth seconds. So do I have any abstentions to this motion? Does anybody abstain? Excuse me, I didn't ask for discussion. Do you have any discussion of this motion?
Actually, Randall, if I may have the floor for just a moment.
Yes, you may. Yes, you may.
Thank you.
You have the floor.
So this schedule or these dates are typically for in-person days, since we normally meet on Wednesdays, all of the committees, and then the council meets on the Thursday. Well, with virtual meetings now continuing, is there wiggle room for additional days, such as for January, possibly doing it from January 19th through the 21st? I don't want to rope us into something and limit us when we might not be in in-person settings at that time.
Right, and that's something I don't think we can decide today. I think we have to look at the medical evidence at the time, closer to the time of say the next one would be January. So I think we have to look at the medical evidence and recommendations as well as whatever emergency orders may still be in place with regard to COVID closer to January. So I think it would be prudent to add a scope of days if everyone agrees. Just to give us more flexibility in scheduling due to the digital meeting setting.
Stephen's waving his hand.
So Stephen, would you like to amend your motion to add additional days?
Just a question.
Yes.
Is it only applicable for January? Is that?
Yes, we would have to meet quarterly. That's set in the DD Act.
Well, I'm saying if we're being flexible on the
Well,
meeting
you
dates.
could do an amendment to all, you can add an extra day or two to all of the dates, but it would be, I would recommend that it be for whatever additions you make, it be for all of these.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and amend my motion to consider, I guess, alternate days for January 2021.
Right, and all of, like if we're going to add additional days, let's do so. I would recommend for all the schedule. Because we will eventually go back to in-person meetings. At this point, though, we have no idea when. So until that happens, we would need the flexibility to allow for digital meetings. And we can
Okay.
always go back and amend the schedule as we need to. It's not set in stone. It just gives us a way to plan.
Okay.
So
if somebody wants to,
you're gonna make a motion to amend your motion on the floor to add additional days to each proposed meeting date.
okay, I'll go ahead and make a motion to amend my motion to provide flexibility as far as dates for future council meetings.
And Courtney, would you like to share what your feelings are about that?
Sure, I was actually just going to reflect what Stephen had just said. I'm going to type up another motion and share that document so that everybody can see what the motion actually states.
Okay. And I will need a second to Stephen's motion to amend.
I will second.
Thank you, Mike. So Mike seconds Stephen's motion to amend the tentative schedule. Do I have any objections? Well, first of all, do I have any abstentions? Does anybody abstain? So this is a vote to change. This is a vote to amend the dates. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Okay. Thank you, Hyacinth. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Stephen, did you say aye?
Yes.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, Mary, Stephen, Hyacinth, Mike.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, now we need to vote to adopt the amended schedule. So now we have the amended schedule on the floor and we need to vote to adopt it. So do I have any abstentions to the motion on the floor? Does anybody abstain? Hearing none, do I have all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The motion carries by majority vote. Okay, next item. Next item on the agenda. So Courtney, could you please put the agenda up for us? Okay, so the creation of email address for the executive committee. And this actually doesn't need a vote. This is something I've already directed Courtney to begin doing. This is, we're going to create a .gov email address for the executive committee, which will forever be in place. And by that, I mean, it won't fluctuate with our terms as to who serves on the committee. It will belong to the committee, and it's a place for all. It'll be on our website, and it'll be where people can email us all their concerns, questions, ideas, whatever the case may be. We'll go into that email address. We'll all have, each member of the executive committee would have access to the account, but myself as chair and Courtney as interim executive director would have the ability to respond. And that's because we typically are the people who respond to correspondence between meetings on behalf of the council. So that's something I've already directed her to do. I just wanted to inform y'all of, and I'm also going to request that I, as your chair, get a .gov address, because as y'all know, there was a hoax that went around where someone was using some email that's not even mine, but my name, to request money from council members. And so this deeply concerned me, and I don't know that we can prevent it, but creating this would allow us to get that somewhat under control, in that you will know when something comes from me and it's a .gov address that it is from your chair. And so I think that's important. And so I've requested that I get an email address that will go up on the website once created for those to email me. That'll be .gov, and that will allow the IT department to assist me in matters like hackings and whatnot. Also, and I think that's important. Also, I think it's important for continuity's sake. When April passed away, I did not have access to some of her communications because they were in her private emails. So I want to create this so that whenever I transition out of this office, the next chair will automatically have access to the documents and to the emails that they need that's pertinent to carry out the work of the chair. And I think it's important for the executive committee to have one source, one place we can all go that's secure to view emails that are sent to us. So I've already directed Courtney to begin creation of that. If each of you would like a .gov address, I would encourage it, and it would replace the one you currently have on the website that may be from a private account once created. You don't have to do it. It'd be voluntary, but as your chair, I would recommend it. And it would be easy to create. It's not something I'm going to ask the council to adopt right now as a whole. I think as an executive committee, I think it's something we can certainly test and try out and make sure that it works. And we could open it up to everyone to have one if we so choose. So, but for the moment, we'll be creating one for the executive committee itself and for myself as your chair. Have any feedback on that? Questions, comments?
Randall,
Yes.
hey, would there be an issue about all of us having access to the email and it being like open meeting because we're all getting the same emails and we're all on the same
Well, that again, we'll only be able to publicly respond, Courtney and I, and that would be something that we'd have to essentially go by the honor system that we could not discuss, which is that way now. We theoretically could discuss things we get by email, but we do not. And so I think though having a .gov would allow, as I said, those emails we do receive to be in one place for the staff to have them in one place for the committee to be able to review and look at as needed. I think that's important because right now we have a sort of disjointed, like, yes, I got that email. No, I didn't. Or did you get this or did you see that? And I think that would cut down on that. And also the IT department can help us keep track of those as well, which I think is important. Yes, Mary.
So would we have to go in there and check it to make sure that somebody didn't send an email? They're asking me a question, or is that something that staff's going to be monitoring the email? How would we know if there was?
The chair would. The chair will monitor the executive account, and Courtney would assist me with that. And so if we did get comments or questions, then I've directed that it's my job as your chair to speak on issues for the council in between meetings anyway. And so I would have the authority to be able to speak to questions that may come in for any of the executive committee or council between meetings. And not just me, that would be the authority of the chair. It is the authority of the chair, and this is just a way to centralize the emails we're already getting and to make sure that they're in one place for the committee to see, and discussion would take place as it always does at our meetings. But any responses would come from either myself, with regard to the executive committee account, would come from either myself or Courtney. Does that answer your question, Mary?
Yeah, so I think if the chairperson and the executive director are the only ones that would have access to it, then that might be better, because then if you see it and it says Mary Tarver needs to do whatever, then you're just replying it or sending it to me, and we're discussing it and not having the whole committee.
Okay.
Is that what you were thinking?
That's fine. I want a centralized place because I didn't have one when April passed away.
Right. That makes sense. I think
a lot of work. I'm going to tell you, that was a lot of work to try to figure out where we were on all these different things when she passed away. I don't want this to happen to another chair.
Yeah, I think having the email would be good. I don't want us to get into a thing where somebody sends the email and then we have them talking about somebody else and all of us have seen it and blah, blah, blah. I think it would be good if we had the executive
director,
the chairperson, and then the
executive director, then you could funnel through the emails to whoever it needed to go to if you needed. Okay, noted. Answered by someone else. That's still being worked on, so we can set it up that way. That's fine, as long as y'all are okay with it. Any other comments or questions with regard to the issue? Hearing none. Okay.
No, I had my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see it. I'm sorry. Yes, Madam Vice Chair.
So for clarification, the email that we know that's going to be set up, you and Courtney will have the authority to reply.
Yes.
But the executive committee will have the authority to view it, but not to well, not to reply, correct? But what Mary is recommending is that the executive committee not view it and it just be, the email would just go to you and Courtney under the executive committees .gov, and then you and Courtney will decide to forward it to executive committee members that it's involves or is it respective to. Is that what I'm understanding the clarification is?
That's what I was recommending so that we don't have the 4 or 5 other people that are all on executive committee all see something that we don't do because it might violate open, meeting laws. And then some of the stuff coming through could not be appropriate, I guess is the word.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
I'm sorry, executive committee members, it looks like we have lost our chair. We will try to reconnect with him shortly. So we will continue to stand at ease while we try to reconnect with the chair.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, y'all. My battery
Yes.
went dead. Okay, I apologize. Where are we?
We were finishing the discussion of the creation of the email address for the executive committee.
Okay. So is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Hearing no objections, that will proceed as I've already outlined to Courtney and shared with you earlier. Okay. Do we have any public comment? That's our next item.
Randall, Julie Foss has her hand raised.
Yes, Julie, you have the floor. Julie, you have the floor. I think she has something in the chat box. Could y'all read it? Could one of the staff please read it?
Yes, she says, sorry, no sound. Julie LeCan, Leader Region 3. I would like to suggest in regards to the advocacy agenda that maybe we could do the 3 items or 1 or 2, and then say if there is cuts, then we will shift our advocacy to save services. I'm suggesting this because our members are really passionate about the items we listed, and I don't want them to feel they are not being heard or get frustrated. I'm sorry, hold on. Or get frustrated and stop being active LeCan members. Thank you.
I apologize. It looks like we have lost Randall again. So we'll be at ease until he can join us.
I guess they're done.
Welcome back, Chair.
Thank you. I don't know how long it lasts. My poor phone's not holding much of a charge. Are we still discussing public comment?
Yes, sir. I think we just have one comment from Melinda Elliott in the chat box.
Okay.
Would you like for me to read it?
Could you please read it? Yes. Yes. I'm sorry.
The DDC has always been known for having an agenda looking for a proactive agenda. If our major focus is preventing cuts, we are basically agreeing to a reactive agenda.
Thank you, Melinda. Committee, how do we feel about it?
Personally, I see it both ways.
I do as well. I think they put a lot of time and effort into selecting their priorities, and we're basically taking them all out of consideration.
Okay. What is any more feedback from the committee?
Dr. McKee has her hand raised.
Yes, Madam Vice Chair, you have the floor.
Since I made the motion, I actually see it both ways as well. My only concern is to go to the legislative, asking for $8 million for one, and then asking for $500,000 for another priority. My biggest concern is the amount of money that we're going to ask for that's tied to the priorities. So I do see it both ways, and I do see a lot of work that's been going in, that went into that. But again, if we go back to looking at all of the priorities, then it's gonna be upon us to sit there and dissect the entire list to determine what has more priority over another one and all of that. We have 8 million tied to one, and we have $500,000 tied to another one. So we are going to ask the legislature for $8.5 million while even targeting the third priority. So again, I made the motion because we have heard from several committee members today and from public members the concern of us looking at some budget cuts next year. So again, that's why I made the motion, but the committee can, feel free to amend the motion and then go into more discussion about on how they decide to proceed, how they seem fit to proceed.
I think Stephen may have his hand raised.
Stephen, in the absence of Randall, you have the floor.
Can we consider maybe taking a couple of them off? And I don't know. I know funding is going to be an issue. I guess narrowing it down to maybe top 2 instead of 3, and having the third one as what we originally mentioned. I don't know.
So are you making a motion to Are you putting in a different motion to, are you making a motion now? And then if you do that, it will be up to the committee to determine are you going to amend the motion that was previously adopted to reflect what you want to include? I mean, and if so, then are you going to amend the motion that was already adopted that's on the floor?
I guess I was just trying to solicit, I guess. I wasn't really making a motion. I was just seeing what everybody else's thoughts were. And
Stephen wants to see if there's anybody else's thoughts, any other committee thoughts about this. I see Mary's hand up. Mary, you have the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's probably unprecedented that we're asking for anything as far as money goes. And I know that the biggest ask is about the cameras in the special education classrooms, but with COVID and all the changes, I mean, it's rare to get an opportunity to be in a classroom now if your kids are back in school and not doing virtual. It's I'm sure one of the things, and just moving forward, how things will look with continued lack of access, that I know it's the biggest ask, but maybe it's the one that we ask, and if nothing else, fight for no other cuts. I don't know. I do feel strange about us just saying, let's just not have cuts, but it's like the hard button. It's either way, it's not an easy decision to make, but I would be open for us to still be asking for something. And out of these things, to me, the cameras and the special education, I know it's been something that we've been talking about for several years, so won't be anything new that we haven't already asked for. I don't know. I guess that's what's running through my mind.
Thanks, Mary. Mike, you have the floor.
Oh, I wasn't asking for the floor, but I kind of, I do agree with what Mary said. I mean, cameras in the classroom, I think, is, an important issue, but there's others on there that are important. I know cameras is one of mine, but there are others on there that are important, and maybe we take a look at the ones with the limited cost associated to them, and see what we can put on there. I'm the same. Just not asking for anything but no cuts is, I don't know. I feel like we've, kind of shortchanged the Lacan Families Helping Family members.
So you all have to make a motion. We are at 2:53 p.m. And so a motion has to be made. We've had a lot of discussion about this topic. And so if the intention is to change the previous motion that was made, that was passed by the majority, then someone will need to make a substitute motion or another motion to replace that. I mean, not a substitute motion, another motion to, it has to be a motion to amend the motion previously adopted. So you will have to amend the motion that was previously adopted. So someone will need to do that. And then when you amend it, just make it clear as to what the motion is supposed to be written as and what's it's supposed to be said. And if there's no motion, we're going to have to move to the next item. So I'm going to allow for maybe a minute of reflection, 1 minute, so that someone from the committee can make an amended motion to the motion that was accepted by the majority earlier.
Highest, I feel like I'm like on some crazy show where we can't make up our mind. These are huge decisions, and I think that my gut is telling me that we just still ask for the things that the people through Families Helping Families and LaCan have told, have recommended. I'm sure we'll have discussion about it tomorrow, but I would make the recommendation that we
make the motion. I'm sorry, Mary.
Make the motion. Sorry. Yeah, make the motion that we have the three, I guess, I don't know, I'm going to say all three of the items back on the legislative agenda.
I was still muted. Okay, there's a motion. We need a change. That's kind of like an undoing. So you're gonna need to, I'm trying to read it as it was typed. So are you rescinding the previous motion? I mean,
I think I'm making a substitute motion.
all right. All right, so we have a substitute motion on the floor from Mary. And the motion is to consider the 3 recommended items received from the CAN leaders and FHF directors to be included in the council's fiscal. Okay, so first we have to undo this previous motion and then make a new motion. So, all right, so Mary, you're gonna have to strike, you're gonna have to motion to remove the existing motion that was there, to rescind the existing motion that was there, and then go in and put your substitute motion.
Okay, I make a motion to rescind the previous motion and substitute the motion to consider recommendations of all three of the priorities from LaCan and Families Helping Families.
Got it. All right, and so the first one, so now we need to rescind that one first. So the motion that you made is to rescind the, to consider shifting focus on costs to existing services for families and communities due to COVID-19. We need a second to rescind that motion. Do we have a second to rescind that motion?
I will second.
Okay, so Mary made the motion to rescind, Mike seconded. All right, so now Mary, I'm sorry, we need a 2/3 vote on that. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
No.
any opposed? Any abstentions? I'm going to abstain. Okay. Hearing no other, any public comment on that?
Liz Gary has her hand raised. Oh, well, yes, she has her hand raised.
Okay, Liz, do you have your hand up? You have the floor.
Thank you, Hyacinth. I just wanted to say just two things. The first thing is that, yeah, LaCan always had agenda items, regardless of the fact that there was a risk at a budget deficit, because you just never know what could happen. And as far as what Melinda and Kathy were saying, yeah, we did have an influx of income. It was about a year or two after because of sales taxes, but there is always that possibility that there is. I just wanted before to make sure that it was aware that there was a possibility that there would be a deficit, just to be prepared and ready, that even if you had an agenda, it's possible that you would have to switch it to just basically going into savior modes. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much, Hyacinth.
Okay. Thanks, Liz. All right, so it looks like we have it. It's been carried, it's been adopted. All right, so now Mary's substitute motion is up on the floor. Okay, and so Mary's substitute motion is for the council to consider the 3 recommended items received. Oh, we got a second for the first motion was Mike. Okay, good. All right, so now substitute motion for council to consider the 3 recommended items received from the LaCan leaders and FHF directors to be included in the council's fiscal year 21 legislative agenda. We need a second for that.
I will second.
Mike second. And on this one, we need all in favor?
Aye.
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 Said aye, okay. Okay, any objections? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carried. Okay. Any other public comments? If not, we're gonna go right to the next item.
There are several comments in the chat, Hyacinth.
Okay. I don't see the chat. How many are there? I'm sorry, Ebony, how many are there? Because I can't see it.
About 6 or 7.
Okay. Are they pertaining to what we've already discussed? I will allow it at a maximum because we are over scheduled now. We are over our 3 o'clock time. So I will allow the public comments, but no more than 3 minutes per person. if they want to speak to their comment instead of, reading it from the chat. I can't see the chat, so I don't know who has what, who has a hand up or whatever. I'm not seeing that on my screen. I'm looking at a shared screen right now. No repeat.
Miss Rosalind Heimel has raised her hand.
Okay, Rosalind, our DD council member.
Yes. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, Rosalind, we can hear you. You have the floor.
All right. I was really wondering, even when we do make this kind of changes like we do, even what I want to know, how many more changes can we make total?
So Rosalind, that's a good question. Are you asking about the change that we made with the motion, or are you asking about the changes in terms of what we intend to present to the legislature?
All of that.
Oh, okay. All right. So you kind of already, I don't want to bring you through the whole process, that when we make motions and it's all majority vote, then we act on that. I'm hoping that your question is probably asking what other public members were mentioning, that if we don't have a deficit, right? If we don't have these cuts, I think some of the concerns was we still need to have something to present to the legislature. I think that's what I'm understanding your question to be. And so I think right now what the committee just did was to ensure that we do still have something in place to advocate for if we don't have those budget cuts that we don't want to have, but we are anticipating. So I hope I answered it, Rosalind, to answer your question on that. So the question is, we wanted to make sure we had something in place just in case if we didn't have cuts, even though we are fearing that we may have cuts. So I hope that answered it, Rosalind. Did that answer it? I hope. She's still on mute. So, okay. All right. Thanks, Rosalind. I'm sorry. I hope I answered it. Okay. Anyone else in the public comment that we can get to?
No one else has their hand raised, Hyacinth.
Okay. No one else has their hand raised. Okay. So I hope that we were able to address the comments that were in the chat box. Again, we are going to, if there are no other public comments, we are going to move forward with the agenda. And so now we're at announcements. So do we have any announcements we need to make for today? Any announcements?
Okay. I'm sorry, this is Courtney.
Courtney.
Just a reminder that at the January meetings, all of the committees are going to be requested to present activities or initiatives that they would recommend for the FY 2022 Action Plan Committee for that development, for that plan. So I know we just implemented some things and we're still actually deliberating on the 5-year plan, but it's already time to start thinking about the 2022 plan.
Yeah, it seemed like that time just went by so fast, folks. And thanks, Courtney, for sharing that with us and letting us know that we have to start getting in gear to prepare for that January meeting. So again, thank you for that. Any other announcements? Okay, so hearing no other announcements, we are ready to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting for today.
I'll make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Stephen, for your motion, and thank you, Mike, for your second. Hearing no objections, right? Can we adjourn this meeting, folks?
Thank y'all.
All right, you guys have a great evening. Thank you for your
Thanks.
time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.